This video is for EdXL Economics Unit 3 and it's focusing on the topic of how companies grow. First of all, have a look at this case study, pause the video, think about how this company is growing, how you would define that. In this case, this company is spending £47 million of its own money to expand and grow its business. We would call that an internal expansion. Moving on to this situation here, we've got British Airways and Iberia merging. Pause the video please and have a think about how you would describe this growth method. In this situation we would call that external expansion because you're growing outside of your current business. You're merging, or in some cases taking over, another business. There are several different ways in which we would describe how firms merge. One of those is horizontal integration. Horizontal integration occurs when two firms which are at the same stage in the production process either merge together or where one takes over another one. So if you've got two firms making cardboard boxes, that would be horizontal integration because they both do the same thing, they're both at the same stage in that process. Alternatively, you can have vertical integration. Vertical integration is the merger of two firms at different stages in the production process. It can be forwards vertical integration if it's towards the consumers, or backwards vertical integration if it's moving away from the consumers and towards the raw materials if it's a production or something. So, if a cardboard box manufacturer was taking over a sawmill, cutting up the trees to convert into paper, then that would be described as backwards vertical integration because that's away from the end user of the product. Have a look at this diagram here, pause the video and think about what the answers would be, what type of integration you've got occurring at A, B and C. Moving on, hopefully you've worked out the answers to those. In A's situation, it's forwards vertical integration. If Airbus, who make the planes, were to take over British Airways, who use those planes to fly people around, that's moving towards the consumer, so that would count as forwards vertical integration. B would be horizontal integration. British Airways and Iberia merging, or one taking over the other. They both do the same thing, they're both flying people around, they're both at the same stage of production. And lastly, C would be backwards vertical integration. Thomas Cook sell tickets to you as a consumer on British Airways planes. So that's, if Thomas Cook were to take over British Airways, that's moving away from you, the consumer, and towards the production of the planes. So it would be backwards vertical integration. Have a look at these four different firms here. Pause the video, have a think about what they have in common, or do some research on the internet if you're not sure. Now, the one key thing those four firms have in common is that they would all be described as conglomerates. That's because they all own several businesses that do not have any common interest. Tata, for example, just in the UK, they own Tetley Tea, they own Jaguar Land Rover, and they own Tata Steel. Those three firms do not really have anything to connect each other, but they're all owned by one company. So, if one firm takes over another firm that is not in the same industry as itself, then we would describe that as a conglomerate merger. Lastly, the opposite of a merger is called a demerger. We've got an example here of Punch Taverns decided to sell off a part of its business called the Spirit Pub Company. So it's basically now become two separate businesses. It can be more than two in some situations with demergers, but it's often two firms. And there are various different reasons why they might do that. In Punch's case, you can see it talks about how dramatically their share price has fallen over the last few years. And that concludes this video about how companies grow. With this topic in particular, please make sure you're very precise and accurate with your definitions of the different types of vertical and horizontal integration. It's a very common multiple choice question, that one. And if you've got any questions, please tweet @DizzleEducation.